A school bus is barreling down the road when it slips on black ice and begins to spin out of control. The car behind it doesn't have time to stop. The driver has a decision to make: veer off the road, endangering the car's passengers, or ram into the bus, endangering the schoolchildren. The human driver acts on instinct and slams on the brakes, but an autonomous vehicle might have time to make an informed decision. The car won't know what to do unless we pre-program it with ethical rules. You can train a robot to save some lives even if you give it a bare-bones ethical code. In an experiment released in 2014, Winfield and his team created an ethical robot called A. They trained A to save H robots, meant to represent humans, from falling into holes. When given the ethical dilemma of two H robots to save, the robot was able to save at least one robot 58% of the time. Winfield's robot is a very simple example of an ethical machine. In comparison, autonomous vehicles will face more complex ethical decisions. Furthermore, the impact of their choices will extend far beyond a laboratory setting. Some question whether an autonomous vehicle will need to make ethical decisions. They claim autonomous vehicles will rarely get into accidents, will be able to avoid moral ambiguities by following the law, and will have humans make the moral choices. I will be debunking each of these beliefs to show why autonomous vehicles need to make ethical decisions on their own. So, why should ethics be programmed into autonomous vehicles? While the DOT predicts autonomous vehicles will reduce traffic fatalities by 94%, not all crashes can be avoided. Even in a fully autonomous world, there is still some risk involved in driving. For example, a car could decide to drive closer to the edge of the road to give a biker more room. This transfers risk from the biker to the occupants of the vehicle, and is a moral decision a car will have to make. Furthermore, today's autonomous vehicles are already programmed with morals in mind. For example, to design Google's self-driving cars, engineers had to answer ethical questions about debris avoidance. A second criticism is that moral ambiguities shouldn't be an issue if the car can follow all traffic laws. Except you can't circumvent moral decision-making by following the law. For example, if a tree branch covers one side of the road and there's no one in oncoming traffic, a human would cross the double yellow line to go around the branch. A vehicle programmed to always follow the law would simply sit behind the branch until it is removed. Additionally, the moral decisions a car makes will outnumber the laws made. Lastly, many people say that humans should always make moral decisions. However, drivers have to make these decisions in real time, and it's not practical to assume a car can just hand off moral responsibility to its human passenger. We've already seen multiple cases of failed handoffs in human pilots. When autopilot fails, human pilots are forced to make a quick decision. There's often a failure to react fast enough or make the correct decision. The human passenger may also be unwilling or unable to make a sudden moral decision, so the AI will have to be responsible for these split-second decisions. However, there are issues with having ethics pre-programmed into vehicles. Programmers must be careful when creating ethics for autonomous vehicles. The public outcry from a failed attempt could stop autonomous vehicles from saving any lives. To prevent this, car companies must learn to incorporate cultural and governmental differences, especially when selling autonomous cars abroad. The first thing to consider is how culture affects moral decision-making. Not all moral choices are universal. Multiple studies have found that moral preferences change depending on cultural norms. MIT created the Moral Machine experiment to measure this cultural effect. The platform gathered 40 million decisions from over 233 countries. They found that what cultural cluster a user was from affected their moral decisions. Most manufacturers sell cars internationally, so they will have to keep in mind how cultural norms inform the morals of the buyers they sell to. Perhaps companies will tailor the moral codes to a country's preference. Otherwise, manufacturers may cause a public outcry and fail to capture that market. Companies may also have to tweak the car's morals to obey government regulation.
A 2016 study found that people are less willing to buy autonomous vehicles that sacrifice passengers. The authors suggested that governments may need to regulate the morals programmed into cars to ensure they benefit society. However, government regulation may go against cultural preferences and delay the adoption of autonomous vehicles altogether. So far, Germany is the only country to create a framework for the ethics inside driverless cars. In 2017, a German government commission released a report with guidelines that proposed, in the event of an unavoidable accident situation, any distinction based on personal features is strictly prohibited. This contrasts with findings from MIT's Moral Machine experiment. Throughout all clusters, there was a preference to save young lives over old, and some clusters even preferred women over men and fit over unhealthy. Regulation of autonomous vehicles could restrict who's willing to buy them, especially if the cars do not follow morals that align with the public's culture. In conclusion, the main issues that face ethical autonomous vehicles are the regulation of morals and cultural differences. If done poorly, the morals programmed into autonomous vehicles could delay their adoption and diminish the 94% reduction of traffic fatalities they are promised to bring. This could lead to millions more dead when a safer alternative is available. However, companies cannot avoid programming morals into their autonomous vehicles. Drivers make ethical decisions all the time on the road, and these choices can't be covered by traffic laws or decided by human passengers. So, the kind of morals programmed into vehicles must be carefully considered. Companies will need dedicated ethicists. Governments will need to determine how to regulate this new technology. And we, as consumers, will have to decide what machine morals we will accept.